I write under my maiden name, Sean C Wright, and I'm here to talk about my book today, Skoll's Diary. Y'all see that? Okay. So the concept for this book came to me actually about 3.5 years ago because of the election. So
Okay.
I'm not going to get into all those unpleasantries, but I think most people understand that for people of color that the government we have now is just, it's not the best for people who look like us. That's all I'll say.
Right. Very true.
And so I got to thinking, what would happen if Black people just up and left Earth? Okay, so that's the concept for the book Skoll's Diary. And so in the book, Black people decide to leave Earth in the year 1900, and they go to Saturn. And Saturn in the book is, it has solid ground. In real life, it's a gas giant, meaning that if you tried to stand on Saturn, you would sink. Okay, so yes, that's the little mythical town that I drew. And so Africans and African Americans go to Saturn and they colonize it, and they become the Saturnae or Saturna, however you want to say it. And the two A's at the end stand for African and African American. And they make a whole village with their own language, own law, own religion, and they speak Saturnish. And I also often wondered what would happen if people of African descent were left alone without racism touching us at all. Like, would we flourish? And in my book, my experiment proves positive that we do indeed do very well. It's pretty much a utopia. There's very low crime. Everybody is fed and clothed, and it's a very close-knit community.
Right.
And
It was really fascinating to read how you developed this whole culture, how everybody was happy, how we, came from, leaving the baggage or whatever, of being on Earth behind, and how they came to Saturn and developed like this whole new culture, whole new language. Everybody flourished, like you said, chicken in every pot or whatever, and it was just a really fascinating concept. Because you always hear people say, well, why don't you go back to Africa? Why don't you go back to where you came from? Whatever. When you took it a whole step further, and we left the planet, and so it was just really interesting, the concept behind it, the fact that it is for young adults, even on up into adults, but it was a fascinating concept, and it was really interesting to see, like I said, how everybody developed from 1900 all the way on to, it starts with 3005, I think is, whenever it starts. So it's very fascinating to read. So you said, normally Saturn's a gaseous planet. And so, I do want to kind of know how you came about, researching and everything, and how you kind of developed the concepts for, the Saturnish, the Saturna, the culture.
okay, well, anyone who knows me knows I am a huge nerd.
I love that. I love how you represent for blurs out there. That's awesome.
Right. Yes, I am a major blurred. And I've always been interested in astronomy and astrology, how the planets play on people's astrology signs too, because I'm an Aries and I'm one to the letter. And so, but I digress. But anyway, so I had to watch a lot of documentaries on space, and I had to do quite a bit of research on Saturn and find out, how many moons it has, how long it would take human beings in, way back when to get to Saturn, and its atmosphere and that kind of thing. And it was really fun for me. That would be work for some people, but I quite enjoyed that. And so also in the book, I wanted, because even though slavery was over in 1900, you still had problems with colonization.
Right.
Right. And so that was why I had us leave Earth, because I wanted us completely, our culture to be completely virgin, to start all over again. And that was the point of leaving Earth and going somewhere else. And also to prove to young people that that we do come from, we're descendants of very innovative people. You know, we are inventors of the gas mask, the traffic light, refrigerated trucks, and just an endless list, a laundry list of so many modern conveniences and scientific breakthroughs. And so I wanted to also prove that we probably could do this. I mean, this probably might happen, and we won't be here to see it, but I mean, it could happen. And so Skoll is he's a teenage boy. Mm-hmm. And through his diary, we find out about life in the Saturnish settlement. Sorry. And so that's what it's all about. And it's, if you just want a trip with pretty much pure imagination and a little bit of fact thrown in, I think this is for you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the concept of, leaving all this behind is still, fascinating for us even today, leaving all this behind and going somewhere else, mm-hmm. We're still going through some of the things now, not slavery, of course, but we're still going through things. And the idea of leaving it behind, I think, is still an interesting concept, for us even now today. And so, yeah, I did love all the research you put into it, because you can definitely tell, in reading it, how much care and how much, thought you put into, like, creating this whole world, this Saturna, that's in here. I do want to kind of touch on a little bit, what made you write it in diary form? Instead of just, writing like a novel, what made you do it in a diary form? Because I love that. You don't see that very often. And I like how you did that. And even I was showing before, you had some little drawings from them in here, throughout the book. And that was really cute. And I liked how that was kind of thrown in there.
This is going to sound kind of strange, but Skoll told me to write his story.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get to my laptop every day to see what he was going to say. And so it's almost like I was a medium for his journal. And I think that also gives authenticity if you show somebody who's just reporting what happened, as opposed to, first person or third person. If somebody can say, this is what happened during my day, I think that makes the reader much more closer to the character.
Yeah, it really does. You really get to know him, when you see his life play out, and it's an awesome peek inside, this world. So like I said, I love that touch to it, because it makes it even that much more personal in reading it. Like I said, by the time you get to the end of it, you feel like you know everybody, you've seen everybody, you see him grow up and go through these things that he goes through, throughout his diary. And I love that part of it. And I noticed too, I know you said you're a proud blurred and stuff like that, even in your other writings, going back into Honey Riley and Glow Row, and your other stories, you do tend to focus a lot, or tend to use a lot of sci-fi or, paranormal stuff in your writings. What is that about? Because I mean, I know with Black Panther now, that's a big thing, Afrofuturism and seeing blacks in science and in STEM fields and things like that. But I think in the past it wasn't as popular, as it is now. So what made you decide to put those elements into your writing and use that?
Well, again, it was just a happy accident. Some authors may pick a genre and stick with that. I just have stories come to me. They just germinate, in my mind, and I write them down. And sometimes they just, I go where they take me. And so I can't really say that I did that on purpose. It's just something that happened. But I will say that I feel that we are sorely missing from those kind of stories, from sci-fi, from fantasy, just in general, even because Glow Row Save's Best Treasure Chest is just a young adult novel set in modern times. There's no fantasy or science fiction. We often are peripheral characters. African Americans are peripheral characters in books. And I would like to write, or I write books that have African Americans as the focus, as the main character. When I was growing up, there were not really that many books that had that element. And I think it's important, especially for our young Black girls, to have a character they can identify with.
Yeah, that's really true. I totally agree. And like I said, I like the fact that you use a lot of sci-fi in your books because we're missing from a lot of those, stories too. It's not a genre that's really that popular. When you think of Black authors, you think of like, urban books or, romance or, maybe Christian fiction, that kind of a thing. You don't really think of Black sci-fi as being, a huge genre. But I love how you, like I said, use those elements in your books, and I love the focus of here in Skoll's diary. Um, because like I said, I think we're underrepresented in that genre. So, you have several books out. You're the author of 8 books, I believe. And even one of your books, what is it? Not a book, rather, but you've had, what is this? Sodalis, that was actually turned into a movie. So I'm in a lot of author circles and things like that, and they always want to know, how do I get my book out there? How do I become a working author? How do I put myself out there more and more? And you actually had a piece of writing turned into, a movie. So can you speak on how that happened? And just talk about Sodalis a little bit.
Okay, sure. That actually is an essay. That was an essay contest that I entered for Glamour magazine. I've been a Glamour reader since I was a teenager, and in I believe 2006 they had a contest. It was called Real Life Moments, and my best friend and I were. We were best friends when we were like 5 or 6, and we got separated. And we met up 23 years later. And so I wrote about that, to Glamour, and I just said, it was one of the most heartbreaking things that happened to me, because I saw so many girls, grow up with a best friend.
Yeah.
And I didn't, but when we reconnected, it was like nothing, no time had passed at all.
Oh, I love that.
And thank you. And what makes it most striking is that she's Caucasian and I'm African American. And
Okay. Yeah, I
yeah,
noticed in the characters when I saw the pictures of it that it was like that. I wasn't sure if that was in the story or if that was something they did, just for the movie or what. So that was all real life
true.
events.
Yes,
Okay.
that really was. But, is the innocence of children. We didn't realize, we didn't know we were of different cultures
Right.
or what have you. And so anyway, she had to move away. And when we were children, they didn't have the internet. I mean, you couldn't find people when they moved
Mm-hmm.
as easily as you can now.
Right.
And so there were just, I'll try to wrap it up, that there were just a lot of twists and turns. And we found each other again. And in talking, we found out how much we influenced each other's lives, even though we were absent. She adopted two African American children.
Really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah, that's how much I influenced her life. And so yeah, it was just really kind of an amazing story. I would think so, even if it wasn't mine.
Right.
And, yeah, and so Glamour, I entered the contest in 2006, and I said to my girlfriend, I said, this is a really long shot, but what do you think about us entering the contest? Right? Because I just was like, this is like catching lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
It surely is, but what the heck? It's free to enter
Heck
the
yeah.
contest. Yeah, because some contests you have to pay an entry fee. And so you just had to pay postage. So I went ahead and sent it on. And I didn't hear anything, believe it or not, for 4 years. And I had completely forgotten because,
Oh, wow.
well, they had thousands of entries, thousands. And I thought, well, okay, whatever. After the first year, I'd completely forgotten about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a call 4 years later And I noticed on the caller ID that it was from New York. And it's like, okay, I don't know anyone from there, so I'm going to let the machine get it. And then the person started talking, and I was like, oh my goodness. And the rest was kind of history. Actress Jessica Biel liked it. You know, she's Justin Timberlake's wife.
Yeah, I saw that. That's so crazy. So how did she even come across that? I mean, how did that even happen?
Well, there were finalists. And
Okay.
so, yeah, they put mine in the finalists pile, our story in the finalists. And actresses had a chance to choose from the stories they wanted to direct, you know, to bring to the
Oh,
screen.
okay.
Yeah. And so there were three winners that year, and mine was one. And so she chose mine. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. And so she's really cool people, very down to earth. And I mean, this was before she had married Justin and had the baby. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it was an amazing experience. I think it was my 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was that your first award? Because you have, several, but even after that, several books. So was that your first taste of writing, and what happened after that?
That was actually, I had gotten a short story published earlier um, that year. So that was like my baby step to getting published.
Okay.
And I had been writing stories since I was 8. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was like 30 something years later, I finally got a bite, you know, and so that had happened. But there were no books out yet. I hadn't published any books. And then I got the call from Glamour magazine. So 2010 was a good year. And then I I tried to go the traditional route with publishing
Okay.
after that. And I think the world just wasn't ready for what I was wanting to do, you know, like us, because that's just as a woman of color, I write from that perspective.
Right. Yeah, I
And,
don't doubt that.
right. And I'm just like Toni Morrison. For some reason, I can't write with a main character being anything else but a
Right.
black
You write what you know from your heart, from your
right.
experience.
As you know, a black male or female. And so I just decided, well, I think I'm going to bring my stories to everyone else the non-traditional way, and I've been an indie author ever since.
That's awesome. Okay. And so is writing your full-time thing? Do you also have a day job, or what are you doing?
I call it my Clark Kent job.
Okay. Hey,
um,
that's real life. Yeah.
right, right. I'm a receptionist for a hair care company,
Okay.
and you know, when the phones aren't busy, you know, I bring my laptop, and a lot of stories get written there. I like to also just give people, you know, a little taste here and there. I think you've read some of my flash fiction stories.
Yeah, like I said, I love your writing, and it's always out of the box. It's not what you expect. Like I
Mhm.
say, a lot of times you come across urban fiction or urban romance type things or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I like something a little bit different, and I think you bring that. I think your quirkiness, your like I said, your love of sci-fi and things other than it really comes through in your writing, and it's really fascinating and fun to read. So your flash fiction pieces I'm a huge fan of. I'm trying to keep up with everything, and so this book I love, and after reading the description about Honey Riley, I want to get that and read it. And the other one was Gathering of Butterflies. I just love everything that you do, and I'm just really fascinated by it. And I'm glad you touched on the fact that you know it's real life. You have a job, and you also do this as well, because there's a lot of authors and writers think, oh, I'm just going to write my book and it's going to be huge and I'm going to be doing this and this or whatever, and that doesn't always happen, for a lot of people. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you have to do one thing in order to make a way for something else. And so I'm glad that you spoke on that and touched on it. So,
Yeah, I mean, and as an independent author, those seeds that you plant will sprout, you know, one day, and it might take, you know, months or years or even decades, but keep at it. If you truly enjoy writing, I mean, it's, you know, you will become somebody's favorite author one day.
Exactly, exactly. The more you put out there, the more, like you said, seeds you plant, eventually you'll reap your harvest.
Mhm.
So, this is a YA book, and you've had some other books, some children's books. So, what's your favorite, type of book to write? Do you normally write for adults or young adults, or how did you fall into that?
Um, let's see. I think because it had to do with as I was growing up, as I told you, I was also a huge fan of Encyclopedia Brown. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's how Glora was born. She is a teenage detective.
Okay.
And a book like that did not exist when I was a child about a black girl who solved crimes.
Very true.
Right. And so I said, why not? You know?
Hey,
And
why not it be
so,
me? Exactly.
mhm. And so I think my favorite kind of book is just showing the showcasing the strength and the innovation of black women. I mean, we're basically, I'm not trying to be negative, but in a lot of ways, we're born with the deck stacked against us.
That's true, though.
Right. And so I like to write stories about us coming out on top, about us figuring a way around, adversity and that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
even in here, Queen Andromeda, it is that type of woman, that type of character that you wrote, for her. So that was awesome. Almost like, I hate to say Michelle Obama, but almost that type of like figure. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Yeah, that's where I got that from.
Hey, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it comes across as how she led the people, and how everyone is flourishing under her rule and everything. So it definitely comes across as that type of inspirational, character. So yeah.
Mhm. And so have you heard of Queen Nzinga?
I have, yes.
Okay, yeah. So she
Yeah.
is kind of like a hybrid of those two women, of
Okay.
Michelle and yeah, and Queen Nzinga.
That's awesome. Okay. And so what's next for you? I know you just put this out, last month, I believe. And so what's next for you? Do you have anything in mind, or what would you like to do with Skull, or what's on the horizon?
I'm toying with the idea of a sequel to Glow Row.
Okay.
And yeah, and something tells me it should be a trilogy for some reason.
Hey,
And
okay.
yeah, and so yeah, that's my next project. It's going to be a minute because Skull's Diary was exhausting. I'm not going to lie.
I can imagine, yeah, all the
Yeah, so
research and thought. I'm sure
mhm,
emotion, because
mhm.
whoever reads it, it's a very emotional book. You don't expect it to be, but like I said, I literally, really, literally cried at the end of it reading it, because it is very emotional. The the ups and downs and everything that he talks about, um, and once you get to the end, it is sad, but the way you wrote it, I totally understand why it had to be that way. You
Right.
know, um, and I wish I could say more. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but it's like I said, it's very emotional. I can see how it would take a lot out of you putting something like this out there, and going through those emotions, while writing it. So, um,
Right, and I felt sorry for him because it's like he had adult worries, even though he was just a kid.
right. But I think black kids or minority kids, that's real life. I think a lot of kids, unfortunately, go through that, have adult worries, and, as just a child,
Hmm.
family issues or things like that. So, even though it's in the future, futuristic, it's very relatable to, I think kids today, and young men out there, growing up and in that teenage, age range. So yeah, it's very relatable and very real, even though it's set, in outer space and in the future.
This is true.
Yeah. So, you've been writing for several years. You've done very well, doing what you're doing. So, do you have any kind of tips or suggestions for navigating the writing industry, not just as a black female, but just in general?
I do, and it's a simple one. Well, are two actually. Um, write, write, and don't give up. Um, yeah, the more you put out there, like I was saying earlier, the more chances you have to reach somebody. And I don't know about other authors, but if one person tells me they really like one story, even, or it can be, like I said, my flash fiction or a book, then I feel, like I'm rich, that really makes me happy. And as far as, not giving up, that's just, I know it's hard to do. I know it's easier said than done, but there are a lot of books that are famous today that people used to tell them, when they were trying to get it published, that it would never make it. And they're classics.
And that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So just keep writing and keep believing.
Awesome. And so where can we find you? Know we have your book on the website. You have your flash fiction. So where can we find you? You're online, your social media handles. Where are you?
Online, my writer's page is Seanarchy. You can find me there. And I'm on your website. Is it Toy?
Yep, wildbookandtoy.com. And when
Right.
I want to edit this, I'll put little things, on the screen to show your the sites and all that kind of stuff. So
Okay,
yeah.
wonderful. And you can also reach me at my website at www.seanarchy.wordpress.com.
Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah, it was. And let me introduce myself. I am Tanisha from Wild Book and Toy, and it was a really pleasure getting to know you, Miss Sean C Wright, and know more about, like I said, your book, the inspiration behind it, your inspiration for your writing just in general, how you've navigated the industry, thus far. And like I said, I'm excited to see what's next from you. Like I said, I love your writing and your personality and your touches and everything and how you put yourself out there. I'm excited to see, like I said, what's next. And I'm definitely going to stay tuned. Like I said, I'll put everything on the screen and stuff like that so people can find you and know where, to get at you and everything. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak with me. And so, yeah, it was a really good talk. And thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and just for taking a chance on my writing. I know you have a lot of choices out there, and I'm, very appreciative you chose me.
Yeah, well, you know what? It is a lot of books out there, but I do want to say this is one that stands out. It is.
Mhm.
So definitely anyone should check it out. It's like I said, it's very emotional, very passionate, very you know, I think uh a lot of people can relate to it. And just the concept itself, Black people leaving the earth and living in outer space is just a very interesting premise. And when I think people fantasize about that now, what would we do if we could go somewhere and just leave all this behind?
Mhm.
So, I just like I said, love everything about it. So I hope you have a great evening and thank you so much and happy Sunday.
Okay, I'll be in touch, dear. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye bye.